Dear church, let's talk about the Creator and His creation. Hello, welcome to the Dear Church podcast. I'm your host, Chris McCurley. Got a special guest today. David Rives is joining me. David, thank you so much for being on here.
Thank you, Chris, for having me. This is exciting.
This is great. So David and I have become friends, even actually before I moved here. We had talked on the phone. So our viewers and listeners may not know exactly what it is that you are doing here in Dixon and beyond. I know you've got a great following. I want our folks to be introduced to you and the great things that you're doing also in your ministry, your personal ministry, but also in the town of Dixon. You've purchased a pretty big property. So it's the Renaissance Center formerly.
That's right.
Freed Hardeman had a nursing school there and some other classes that they were doing there, and since have sold, and you purchased the place for your ministry, David Rives Ministries, and the Genesis Science Network is something that you have started and been behind for quite some time. But this Renaissance Center that is now tell me again the name.
It's the Wonders Center and Science Museum.
Wonders Center and Science Museum, which if you've, folks that are, familiar with Dixon, if you've driven by it, there's a huge T-Rex skeleton in the foyer. And I've been through part of it where you have all these different creation exhibits and really a cool place. And they're projecting to be one of the biggest kind of creation museums. Is that right?
Yes. Largest, I would say, when this is finished, it's coming along very, very quickly.
Right.
It will be the largest science museum in the world that maintains biblical Christian values, right?
Yeah.
Which is a big deal because, you think about the big science museums. You think about, the British Museum. You think about the American Museum of Natural History.
Yeah.
And you've got all the Smithsonian, right?
Right.
But you go to the American Museum of Natural History today, and you will see this ascent from ape-like creature into mankind, taught as fact, with a big banner above it that says, this is you. Meet your relatives.
Yeah.
Right? And so they are teaching hundreds of thousands, millions of students going through there, meet your relatives. Look, this is you. You're just an animal, right?
Yeah.
What does that do to our self-confidence?
Right.
And yet these are some of the biggest institutions that we know of. So I'm kind of excited about being the largest that is actually pushing a biblical worldview, but talking about real science in the meantime.
Yep, absolutely. So before we jump into all that, talk a little bit about your background, how you got to this point, because you're still relatively young. Compared to most of us, you're still relatively young, and here you've built this enterprise, this ministry, and you've gotten a lot of donations, I know, from other people, and you have a really good backing behind all this. Tell us how you got to this point. How did you start in all this?
Chris, I would say that it's by the grace of God.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that I can say, because when I was probably 16 years old, I got interested in astronomy, all right? And my family had this, it was a 10-inch Meade telescope.
Okay.
And when I was probably, 11 years old, 10 or 11 years old, I saw the comet Hale-Bopp.
Okay.
And was so enthralled with that, right? This is a big ball of ice just flying through space.
Yeah.
Well, at 16, I really didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, but I did know that I had a passion for astronomy.
Yeah.
So I started to connect these cameras, DSLR cameras, just like you would take, professional photography with, to the back of telescopes, and tried to take photos of what I could see with my eye through the eyepiece of these telescopes.
Huh.
But when I finally got a decent photo, which was, around 17 years old, my jaw hit the floor. I was astounded, because I'd always seen these things in Sky and Telescope magazine,
right.
and I said, yeah, I bet they doctored it just a little bit, or maybe they colored it up. It can't look that spectacular, right? And I took the picture for myself.
Okay.
And it was just as vibrant and just as detailed as I'd always seen. And at that moment, again, my jaw hit the floor, and I said, it's real. And this reminds me of Psalm 19.
Yeah.
That Psalm 19 says, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. It says that day after day utters speech, and night unto night shows knowledge, but there's no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. Yeah. So what is the psalmist telling us right there? What is King David telling us? He's saying, the heavens are actually shouting out that there is a grand designer, that there's a creator, that you're not cosmic accident, that you're not star stuff, the result of chance.
Yeah.
And in another place in the Psalms, he says, we're fearfully and wonderfully made. I will praise the Lord because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Yeah. So it hit me at 17 years old. And I said, why am I keeping this to myself? Why is this a hobby? Why couldn't I actually use these photos that I'd taken to go out and share with others the glory of God and then point to the gospel message, right?
Yeah.
To use that as an open door for those who love science or love space, and then tell people that, hey, not only are you special, but let me tell you what Jesus did for you. And it was at that moment that it was a pivotal, life-changing time for me. And my brother and I formed a nonprofit. I was, 18 years old. And we were in Middle Tennessee, about an hour south of here. I started going around just to various different churches or conferences, wherever I could find that would possibly let me speak.
Sure.
And I would go in there, share these photos, tell them about space, tell them that God loves them, and then share the gospel. And that opened it up to conferences around the world, 1 week speaking tours in British Columbia and England, and photo safaris in Africa, and everything you can think of. So it started at around 17 years old.
And I assume that you have a background in, your parents instilled faith within you. And so you were going to church at an early age, and this was always an interest to you, what God was doing and what his creation was like and all of that. I mean,
it was.
Yeah, I assume you had that background.
I did. My parents were actually travel agents, so they were able to arrange tours, commercial travel agents, but they were able to arrange tours to different areas of the world. Yeah. So when I was, 14, was my first opportunity to go to Israel.
Oh, okay.
And I fell in love with the history of the Bible, right?
Yeah.
So they were able to instill those interests from an early age, but still it didn't really transcend into the whole science background, right?
Right.
And once I started looking through telescopes, I realized that history and science go hand in hand. You really can't have science without knowing the history of the world and the history behind it. And if we look at history, we have to have science to analyze it, whether it's archaeology, right?
Right.
So you have to have these scientific fields to even understand history. The two go hand in hand. And then it's that realization that Dr. Werner von Braun, he sent men to the moon, right? He was the head of NASA back during the space race, before NASA was even an official institution. A brilliant man. And yet he said a lot of people look at science and religion as antagonists. He said they're not. He said they're sisters. While science tries to better understand the creation around us, religion tries to better understand the creator.
Yeah.
And when you understand that, then you say, well, when we look around, we do see creation. We see created things, designed things, and you can't have design without a designer.
Exactly.
Who is that designer? And it's so obvious the more we learn that designer is the God of the Bible.
Yeah, it is. And so you found a way to combine two passions.
Yes.
Your faith with your love for astronomy.
Yeah.
And that came together. And so, and folks that don't know your brother Murray, they need to meet him. He's an awesome guy. And I know he's kind of the brainchild behind some of this, like you're the camera, you're in front of the camera in the face, and he's the one they're making you look good. That's how y'all described it to me. And I love Murray. Great guy. So, you found a way to combine these two passions. So at 18, you're traveling the world talking about faith and science and how it goes together and how the design points to designer and all of that. And it just kind of grew from there, right? And so now you have the Genesis Science Network. Talk a little bit about it, what it does and where people can find it and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. The Genesis Science Network was kind of an accident. It came about one day. Well, there are no such things as coincidences.
Right.
It was one of those things where I love watching History Channel. I love watching Discovery Channel, National Geographic, PBS, Nova, NASA TV, right? But I'd always get to the end of that animal documentary that was so good, that had been stating facts all the way through. And then the narrator would come on and he'd say, And all of this is the result of billions of
Yes.
years of evolution.
I'm the same way. Yeah, drives me nuts.
It
Yeah.
just bugged me. And I was like, can't we give the Creator glory for his creation?
Yeah.
Why do you have to put an atheistic spin on everything?
Everything.
Okay? So I told my brother, I was like, is there a possibility we could create our own television network?
Yeah.
And he was like, well, that would certainly be neat if possible.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you this, within 3 months of it even being an idea, just a spark in our heads, we had a fully functional television network.
Wow.
We had people that just came to the rally who knew how all of these things work, who helped us. And first it was 24/7 online. And then quickly we moved to Roku and Amazon Fire TV, started the Genesis Science Network TV apps. And then local television stations around the country started picking up the feed and rebroadcasting it on terrestrial TV.
Yeah.
And the thing grew so quickly. This was probably 6 or 7 years ago now.
Right.
And it is the world's only biblically based science network. It airs 100% free of charge, 24/7 around the globe. We receive salvation reports. Now this is a science network, right?
Wow, yeah.
But that science is consistent with biblical and Christian values.
Sure.
And people watching it innately know that there is something special about this.
Yeah.
And so we've received salvation reports from people watching. We've received dozens of testimonials per week from people watching this network.
Right.
Hundreds of thousands of people around the world have downloaded these apps for free on Roku. Many thousands and tens of thousands more are watching it on YouTube Live, on our 24/7 YouTube Live on the David Rives Ministries YouTube channel. And we just love being an encouragement. We want to, most people would say, well, let's just make it a subscription and see if we can make a buck off of it, right?
Right.
And we just want to be able to cover our broadcast costs.
Yeah.
So, of course, we ask for donations during the programming, but we want to make this thing 100% free so that we can literally fulfill the Great Commission and share the gospel around the world.
Yeah, you want to get the message out.
Exactly.
And so talk about the scope of David Rives Ministries. So you've got the Genesis Science Network. I know you do a lot of public speaking. Are you still doing that? How many weeks of the year are you gone doing speaking and things of that nature?
I tell you, Chris, a year ago it would have been a different story. Many months of the year I'd be gone more days of the month than I was actually back in the office, out speaking. This year I have focused, this past 12 months, I've really focused on getting the Wonder Center up and running here in Dixon.
Right.
But at the same time, let's see, 3 weeks ago, I was doing a Sunday morning service at a church. The week after that, I flew out to California, to Sacramento. Spoke at William Jessup University with a lot of famous scientists and other famous PhDs in different fields. And, in a few weeks, I'll be flying out again. So I'm still doing the public speaking out of state, out of country. In June, I'll be leading my next African photo safari to South Africa, where we'll spend 10 days staying at Christian resorts throughout South Africa and going out every day, looking at the wildlife, taking photos, and then coming back and doing teachings on just how well designed God's creation really is.
That's so cool.
So, the speaking schedule, I've sort of dropped it down to a bare minimal just for these next few months, and then it'll start picking up again. But here's the thing, Chris, I'm hoping that when the Wonder Center is opened, and we're enthusiastic that within the next 3 months we could be open.
Sure.
It won't be every exhibit room, but we really do believe that's a possibility. Then we'll be able to do a lot more there that I used to have to go out and do.
You can bring people in.
Exactly.
So talk a little bit. I've been through the Wonder Center back in November, and it was really, really cool. And I'm sure it's even cooler now. But talk a little bit about some of the things that are in that. What are the plans for that? What's going to be the experience when somebody comes and wanders through there?
Yeah. When you arrive, you will, of course, the first thing you see is this massive sphere from the outside.
Yeah.
That is a gigantic 140-seat planetarium where we'll do shows. But as soon as you walk in, visitors are greeted to a 55-foot-long Camarasaurus skeleton, this huge dinosaur skeleton staring at them, right?
Right.
And then they get their tickets. They'll wander in. They'll see introductory videos down in one of the theater rooms. They might want it's up to them how they want to pursue the journey through the museum, because we've got children's hands-on activities. We have a dinosaur dig with a pit with a stegosaurus that children can brush away the sand and find these dinosaurs.
That's
right?
cool.
You might wander into the wonders of animals, amazing animals of Alaska room. Okay. Where we have all of these animals on display, whether it's a caribou or a muskox or a grizzly bear or giant wolves. And we talk about just how special, or the red fox, for instance. And we talk about how the red fox uses Earth's magnetic field to find north and then to track down a little mouse that might be underneath the snow, maybe 1.5 feet underneath the snow, right?
Yeah.
And we'll tell the story with videos, with posters, with hands-on interactive to describe this whole process where this little red fox can find a mouse 1.5 feet under the snow using Earth's magnetic field when they're lined up with Earth's magnetic field, and then they will jump and pounce and go straight into the snow, and boom, when they come out, they've got a mouse in their mouth.
I've seen that happen. I didn't know all the story behind that.
How did they do that?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Right? But there's even a lesson with that, Chris, because if we're not lined up with God's word, if we're not lined up to true north, right, to the real truth, then we're going to miss what we're looking for.
Absolutely.
We're going to be pouncing all over the snow trying to find it, and we won't be able to find it.
Yeah.
But it's out there. God's word is clear. Sure. There is absolute truth. Everybody wants to talk about, it's my truth, objective morality and all of that. Right. But if we talk about objective morality, then we're in the same situation that Stalin was in. We're in the same situation that Hitler was in. We're in the same situation that all of these people throughout history have been in, where we get to choose our own truths. And if our own truths say, you're just an animal, Chris, it doesn't matter what happens to you, then that's the first step on a very dangerous path.
Yeah, it's removing God from the equation.
It is.
Yeah. Yeah. You had some really cool exhibit rooms when I was there in November, and you talk a little bit about those. I mean, you had a scroll in there that I got to hold in my hands, and from
1,000 years old.
1,000-year-old
Cairo.
scroll. Yeah.
All right. And since then, we have actually had other donors step in and donate many other manuscripts.
Yeah.
But that was probably one of the most significant. And when you go through the wonders of literature, the history and accuracy of the Bible exhibit, that's 7 rooms.
Mm-hmm.
And each of those 7 rooms takes you through history.
Yeah.
One is a full wall mural of Qumran that puts you in Cave 4. It's a picture that I actually took when I rappelled down into one of the most famous caves.
Yeah.
And it puts you in Cave 4 of Qumran, looking out at the Dead Sea in the distance, with this earthen jar sitting here, and draped out of the jar is the complete book of Isaiah, the whole Isaiah scroll, a copy, right? From the first verse to the last, which was written 2,000 years ago. Yeah. Every verse is identical to what we have today. You go into the next room and you find this 1,000-year-old Torah scroll, the actual scroll that was found hidden away in a synagogue in Cairo, Egypt. And this thing, we have to carefully monitor humidity and conditions and all, because we're talking about 1,000 years old, written on animal skins, on antelope hides, with a water-based ink.
Wow.
And yet it sat in that dry climate in Cairo for so many years and escaped being taken by all of these different rulers throughout the history of Egypt. Yeah. Until finally there was a scholar from Cambridge University, and he said, hey, I've heard that there's this secret room in the synagogue. So he travels down from Cambridge in, I think it was the mid-1800s. I'd have to check my dates on that. But he's poking around, and he finds this window high up in the synagogue wall, and he says, well, it looks like a window. He gets this ladder, and he climbs up, and it opens up into a secret room full of scrolls, including the scroll that you're going to see when you visit the Wonders Center.
That's crazy.
And you've seen it. This thing is still remarkably well preserved.
It is.
And what's written on this, of course, Hebrew is right to left, right? So the rightmost column that you see, that is actually where God parts the waters of the Red Sea. And his people walk across the Red Sea. The waters come back in, drown the Egyptian army, and then they sing a song of rejoicing on the other side before God provides manna in the wilderness on that last column. So it's a very, even the passage of this Torah scroll is a very significant piece that talks about God's power, right? He's working. He is here for us. And we want to make that come alive. Yes, it's a science museum. You can walk through as a secularist. You can walk through as a skeptic, and you're going to learn a lot of things about science. Right. But all of that science really is pointing us back to the fact that we have a creator who loves us, who cares for us, and has made it perfectly obvious that he is the author of all real science.
No doubt. It blows my mind that you've had all these things, so many of these things donated.
Yes.
So people have heard about your ministry. They've heard about what you're doing. Talk a little bit about that, of how many people have come and said, hey, I've got this stuff that I want to donate. It's just crazy to me.
It's crazy to me, too. This shouldn't be happening, right? Yeah. Around 10 years ago, 11 years ago, maybe, I was asked to host a television program. And it aired for 10 seasons on TBN, which is arguably the world's largest Christian network. Yeah. And a bunch of other TV networks all over the world, right? So these TV shows actually we're talking about over 100 million households per week in many cases, where I would sit down. And normally I would invite a guest who's a PhD in geology or biology or paleontology or archaeology or astronomy or genetics or any of these scientific fields. Invite a PhD to sit down with me, and we would discuss. And I would ask them simple questions about science, whatever field that was their specialty. And then, I would say, and what are the latest breaking discoveries in science? What are they revealing to you? What are you finding out? And inevitably, Chris, what they would say is, well, everything we're finding is pointing to complexity, is pointing to this design that is inherent in everything. And again, you can't have design without a designer, right?
Exactly.
So hundreds of millions of households around the world would see this content. And then they would start coming to me, and they were like, David, I don't know if you can use this.
You're like, oh, I can.
Yes. But would you like this? And I was like, I've got a place.
So they maybe didn't even know what they had necessarily.
Some of them did. Some of them, in fact, the Torah scroll was remarkable. The man who gave that to me, he's since passed away.
Yeah.
But he came after one of my television programs one day, sat down on the couch next to me, and he's tapping a cardboard tube in his hand, like you put a poster in, right? And he said, David, the Israeli Antiquities has been trying for years to purchase this piece from me for unspeakable, untold amounts of money.
Yeah.
And I keep turning them down because, they'll study it, but it's going to go in a basement.
Yeah.
And he said, but I believe that you actually have the ability to share this with a lot more people.
And tell the true story.
That's right. And he proceeds to pull this Torah scroll out of that little cardboard tube.
What were you thinking?
It was surreal.
You're getting chills.
It was, yes. Yeah. I mean, there are more situations like that than I could possibly recount in a single day.
Yeah.
And we have over 100,000 square feet, largest science museum in the world from a biblical standpoint, to house these things in, to be able to display these things in, to hopefully reach millions with the truth of God's word and share the gospel along the way.
This is partly an advertisement for what you're doing, but then partly I just wanted to pick your brain. I guess we need to have you back on to just do one or the other, right? Yeah. But so I'm kind of going back and forth. But tell me some of the things along the way, just maybe a few examples of things that have just blown your mind, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, when it comes to design and a designer. What are some of the more, you've mentioned a few of them.
Yeah.
What are some of the more complex, in your face kind of things that just opened your eyes to say, wow, this, not that I needed convincing, but this is just mind-boggling how this plays out.
I'll go back to space when it comes to that, right? Because I love astronomy.
That's your passion.
Yeah. It is. It was my first passion, and what I realized is that we live in a universe that is, for the most part, inhospitable to life. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, there are a lot of dangers once you get past Earth's atmosphere.
Right.
And we've been able to navigate some of those dangers,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not a good place to be. All right.
Yeah.
So it's easy to think of the Earth as small and insignificant when you look at the grandeur of space. And yet there are some astounding characteristics that enable it to exist in this universe. I'll just give you just a taste, right? All right. So if we look at the Milky Way galaxy,
Mm-hmm.
which basically looks like this spiral galaxy, it's a beautiful spiral structure. It looks almost like a pinwheel,
Mm-hmm.
almost like a sunflower with these spiral arms. And in the middle of the galaxy is a supermassive black hole. Okay. Now, we know these from the movies, right?
Right.
But what is a black hole? Well, a black hole is such powerful gravity in the middle of this black hole that anything that passes the event horizon of the black hole will not be able to escape. Even light is sucked in. Okay. All right. So I'll just ask you, Chris, do you want to live in the middle of a black hole?
Not really.
No, it doesn't sound like fun.
No.
Okay. So if light can't even escape this, then it's not a great place to be. Stars are being sucked into it, and there's all sorts of violent things happening in the middle of it.
Right.
But it still helps preserve our galaxy. So we would love to have a black hole in the center of the galaxy, but we don't want to live there.
Yeah, right.
We don't live there. All right, let's talk about the very, very far outer reaches, right past the little pinwheels of these spiral arms. Well, in those areas, there's an elemental deficiency, right? So the things that make up this room, the things that make up us,
right,
they don't exist out there, okay?
Right.
It's only light gases, things like hydrogen and helium, all right? So we couldn't exist there. Do you want to live there, Chris?
No.
Okay,
no.
I don't either.
No, not that I could, but I don't want to. Yeah.
So what we actually find is that our position, our solar system, our star, in the midst of hundreds of billions of stars in our galaxy, just so happens to be nestled right in between the Sagittarius and Perseus arms, right in the center of, not in the center, but in the middle of these arms structure of our galaxy, of the Milky Way galaxy, in a spot perfect for life, without the threats of supernovae or elemental deficiencies or any of those types of things.
Right.
And also in the perfect spot for us to be able to look out and observe the rest of the universe. Because our galaxy is one piece, right? There are trillions of other galaxies in this universe.
Right.
And if we lived in the middle of an arm, we would look around and we would only see the stars that are in that arm. But because we live in between two arms, we see the two spiral arms on both sides of the sky. That's what we see as the Milky Way, right?
Right.
If you look up and you see in a really dark sky, you see this narrow milky band stretching across the sky.
Yeah.
That's what you're seeing, the arms of our galaxy. But then you look in between all of that and you see these thousands and thousands of stars. You're actually looking outside of our galaxy into the rest of the universe. And you're seeing this framework. It's almost like the canvas of God, where he has splattered these little galaxies. Yeah. It's his artistry. It's like you're able to see what he finds as creative when he made the universe. And he puts us in a spot so that we can also enjoy that.
Yeah.
What are the odds?
Yeah.
So when I think of these things that couldn't have happened by chance, I think of our position in the galaxy. I mean, we could go on for hours and talk about our position in the solar system, and then even the other planets that are in our solar system that help protect us, and then the way Earth differs from every other exoplanet that we've ever discovered.
Yeah.
But regardless, it's easy for us to understand that the heavens really do declare the glory of God.
Yeah.
And more than that, Isaiah 45 says, "Thus saith the Lord, God himself who formed the earth and made it. He established it, he created it not in vain, and he formed it to be inhabited."
Yeah.
All right, so that takes us all the way. That's Isaiah 45, but it takes us all the way back to Genesis, where it says that the earth was without form and uninhabited. Sure. And then God spends the next 6 days forming it, inhabiting it, making plants and animals and humans, right? Isaiah 45 says God made Earth specifically for that purpose. So while it's really exciting to think about all of these alien movies that are out there and, oh, we're going to find E.T., right?
Yeah.
At the same time, we realize that we're special in God's eyes, not just because he made this planet for us to inhabit, but also because he cared about us so much that he sends his only begotten son down here to this little speck in the midst of all of that.
Yeah.
To live, die, and be raised again so that we could have eternal life with him. Isn't that special?
It is. It's just unreal. We could talk about this all day. And I imagine you mentioned the sphere outside of the Wonder Center, and it's just a big ball if you're looking at it from the outside. But I've been in it, and the chairs are reclining. So you're looking at the ceiling. And so I assume that visitors are going to be able to see kind of what you're talking about with astronomy and, leaning back and looking at the ceiling, kind of an IMAX feel.
It'll be like this IMAX experience where we will produce movies that are full dome, and it looks like you're entirely immersed in this whole thing in the middle of space, and we'll be able to show you everything that I've been talking about.
Yeah.
We'll also be able to do live presentations where we'll have a narrator with a headset who will be able to point out stars and constellations and say, hey guys, tonight, if you go outside, you're going to see this, and that's going to be this planet, and you'll be able to see this star and all of that. And then, last but not least, what else is going to happen in the planetarium? And you're the first to know this, okay? Because
this is breaking news.
Yeah, this is breaking news, y'all. So don't share this with anybody, okay? This is a secret. 3 days ago, we installed only one we know of in the world's only dual musical 1 million volt Tesla coils down at the bottom of the planetarium.
Seriously?
These are 1 million volt Tesla coils that actually shoot lightning bolts at each other to the tune of like different notes of music.
So synchronized with.
Yes.
Wow.
There's no speakers.
Yeah.
No music being played, but you're going to think that you're hearing notes.
That's crazy.
And this just got installed. So I just saw it for the first time a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
And it is spectacular.
That's amazing.
Nikola Tesla was an inventor unlike any other, and he invented this way to take, what we plug into the wall and just amplify that. What's usually like 110 volts or 240 in some circumstances. And these coils take that 110 or 220 and amplify it up to 1 million volts. That's so unreal. Much that there's lightning going on in the dome of that planetarium.
That's cool.
And you're in there watching it.
I don't know whether to be fascinated or scared, right? So not to back you in a corner, but when are you thinking maybe that this is going to open?
Yeah, May 18th. The 18th is the first official use of the theater. So we're actually going to have a guest, Jason Crabb, in there, who's going to do an event. He's a 2-time Grammy Award winner and all of that. But at that point, we believe that we will be able to have a couple of the exhibit halls open, and that's coming up really quickly.
Really quick. Yeah.
And by June, we believe that the museum will be open.
Yeah, that is awesome. And so we find you on Genesis Science Network, which is, if you have Roku streaming TV, or Fire Stick or anything like that, you can find it there.
Yep. Just talk into your remote and say, download the Genesis Science Network app.
Completely free.
Completely free. Yeah. You can also find it 24/7 on our David Rives Ministries YouTube channel. It's always streaming. You can find it at genesissciencenetwork.com. You can find links to all of this on davidrives.com. So if you go to davidrives.com, click on the magazine button, because there's a free magazine, print magazine, that we send out to around, I don't know, it's like 18,000 households all over the U.S.
Yeah.
Absolutely free every other month. And we have science articles, children's activities, news updates on how the museum is going and all of that. If you sign up for email updates, once a week, you'll get that free update, usually with a 2-minute video where I'll tackle some aspect of science and the Bible. And then if you go to wonderscenter.org, you can find out more and keep up with all of the updates. Again, we're really hoping for June.
Yes.
And I think at this point, we're probably going to hit it.
That's exciting. And you know, I'm glad you said Rives because it's David Rives, Rives. Looks like Rives, but David Rives. Dave, thank you so much for coming on today. This has been great. You will be a regular, I promise. We need to have you on. We got so much we could talk about. And I want to tell our listeners and viewers that if you have a question for David, we can make sure that he gets it. You can email me at chris.mccurley@rippleoflight.com. And you might want to throw yours out there if you have a...
Yep. Easiest way is just go to davidrives.com, davidrives.com, and the email link should be on the contact page. Would love to hear from you. Would love to have you in the Wonder Center as soon as it's opened. I think it's going to be an experience, quite a destination for adults, children, families all over the country, and I think all over the world.
I think so.
To come in and just learn about God's creation and to be astounded at what the Lord's done.
And that is on Highway 46 here in Dixon, and you can't miss it. It's a very unique building. The big ball outside is what everybody is drawn to. Thank you folks so much for tuning in. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. Sincerely, Chris.